Hi, good to see you again. How are you doing? It's a virtual class on veterinary toxicology. In uh, in my previous lecture, we deliberated on the toxicity in cattle, sorry, in dogs and cats. And today we are going to discuss the toxicity in cattle, sheep, goat, and swine. So this is totally different. One thing is of importance, that is, when we are talking of the toxicity of these chemicals in animals, the most of these toxic substances manifest their toxicity through the same mechanism by which they have done it in man. But there are certain differences. Those differences are attributed to genetics. Those differences are attributed to physiology. Those differences are attributed to biochemistry. And similarly, those differences are attributed to the type of the digestive system. If you look to compare the digestive system of a cow, it is having a very complex stomach. But if you consider the digestive system of a swine, it is monogastric. That is, it is not having those complex compartment as the cow has. So these are some of the basic differences we are to keep in mind while discussing the toxicity of xenobiotics in cattle or the milching cattle. Rachel Carson, long back, she was aware of it that after World War II, when man is using indiscriminately these pesticides, they will be somehow reaching the environment and they will be somehow reaching man as well as his domesticated animals. If man is exposed to some chemical, the same thing is with the domestic animal, because both are living in the same environment, both are occupying the same oikos. So the effects are expected to be same. So now we will take one by one with the categories of the chemicals. The first category that a cattle can come in contact with the nitrogen fertilizers, non-protein nitrogens. They may be like urea. The farmer may be using a high concentration of the urea and other nitrogenous fertilizers. They are going to the soil, they are going to the crop, they are going to the fodder, and the same fodder is being used by the cattle. So it goes to the cattle and causes toxicity. It's very simple to understand that the forages, they contain higher amount of nitrogen in these and in the plants, and ultimately they are eaten by the cattle and the cattle suffers from poisoning. What poisoning may be caused by the nitrogen fertilizers in cattle? They may lead to abdominal pain, they may lead to bloating, they may lead to extensive urination. And the one thing that is very important with these nitrogen compounds is they change into urea. And when they change into urea, they affect the many enzymes they change into ammonia, and then they affect many enzymes in the liver, and they affect the central nervous system, and they affect the you see the entire system is affected. This nitrates and nitrite poisoning is also occurring through forage. That nitrate poisoning, you know very well, nitrate poisoning, we discussed that it leads to methemoglobinemia in man. Similarly, when these nitrates and nitrites, they are consumed either by food or by water. The water may contain higher amount of nitrogen, the higher amount of these nitrates and nitrites. Then certain crops which are known to accumulate higher amounts of nitrates are also known. Say for example, sorghum. It accumulates higher amount of nitrates and nitrites. Alpha, Milo. These are some of the crops which are given to the cattle to feed upon. and they are accumulating higher amount of nitrates and nitrites, and in this way higher amount of nitrate and nitrite is reaching to the cattle. It is leading to methemoglobinemia, it is leading to respiratory problems. Not only these nitrates and nitrite, they affect the thyroid also. Thyroid of these animals is also affected by higher concentration of nitrates and nitrites. So farmer is using nitrates, farmer is using other nitrogen, urea and other things. They are being accumulated through food chain, they are entering into the animal body, and the cattle or the milching cattle, they suffer the most. Then we have got another very important relationship we had been talking about while we discussed the genu valgum or molybdenosis. That is the copper poisoning in cattle. Molybdenum poisoning is less known in cattle, but copper poisoning is very well known in cattle. Copper poisoning has been recognized in sheep in the form of a well defined disease that we call as TART. It is dirt, and the copper accumulates into the wool, and it causes the color of the wool changes, the cost of the wool declines. All these things are related with sheep farming. Copper has got a tendency to cause hemolytic crisis. Hemolytic crisis occurs in the sheep, and then it leads to hemoglobinuria. It leads to kidney failure. It leads to liver failure. It gets deposited in the liver. We have localized copper in the liver of rat when we inject it or feed it on higher amounts of copper. It leads to hepatolenticular degeneration. The same thing is there in the sheep and the goat also. It leads to hepatolenticular degeneration. And the only remedy is that we give D-penicillamine or some chelating agent to remove excess of the copper from the body. Similarly, so this is, you see, a very important relationship occurs that we had been talking about. The trace element, the plant, the animal, man relationship. In that relationship, if you study, you find, oh yes, the copper may be used as a fungicide, and the grains, forage, it may be contaminated by copper, and the cattle deliberately or by accident consumes higher amounts of copper, leads to kidney damage, leads to liver damage, leads to this hemoglobinuria and other things, you see, they occur after copper poisoning. Similarly, cattle and these sheep, they also suffer from lead poisoning. Lead is ubiquitous. Lead is present in water. Lead is present in soil. Lead is present in air, and when lead is present, used extensively in batteries, those batteries are disposed of by the farmer in some corner of the farm, and somehow that leakage occurs, and some animals, they have got the tendency to lick it, and when they lick these batteries by accident, the lead enters into their body, and lead disturbs, you know very well, the heme synthetase. It inhibits the activity of delta aminolevulinic dehydratase. Lead causes calcium mobilizations from the bone. The calcium content of the bones reduces, and many other toxic manifestations are followed. When we talk of lead is present in pesticides also, and lead can the toxicity that has been observed in cattle is the effect on peripheral nervous system, like something like of ataxia or something like that of a nervous disorder. And the second thing that has been reported in cattle is this what you call this demyelation of the nerves. The nerves, they get demyelinated. You know, the nerve has got a covering of myelin, and lead removes the myelin sheath. It weakens the myelin sheath, and therefore it becomes demyelinated. Similarly, we have got another trace element which can be poisonous. The fertilizers can be poisonous. The trace elements can be poisonous, insecticide, pesticides like this, and similarly these metallic compounds. Another very important metallic compound is selenium. And here the selenium does not cause the disease like Keshan disease. What it causes, selenium is present in higher amounts in certain types of fodder which are given to the animals to feed upon. And these are, there is one very important species of a plant, Asteralagus. Asteralagus has got very high amount of selenium concentrated in its leaves, stem, and if the cattle feeds on Asteralagus, by nature cattle know what to eat and what not to eat. But it is the interference of man that forces them to eat something different that they do not like to eat. So when the leguminous plants are not available, this specific fodder is not available, the cattle forced to eat upon astragalus, and astragalus enters into the body and it releases selenium. Selenium causes toxicity. So is the copper, lead, selenium, all these, they are having very bad effects on cattle. The concentration, people have reported the concentration reaching to 10,000 ppm can lead to death of the cattle. Similarly, if now we come out from this copper molybdenum relationship, selenium relationship, and copper relationship, if we move further to another type of toxins that can affect the cattle, these are the mycotoxins, the bacteria. Mycotoxins, aflatoxins, they lead to blood clotting, they cause the gastrointestinal bleeding, they lead to other problems. We have got some mycotoxins which are called as T2 mycotoxins. There is another drug which is called as zearalenone. There is another drug which we call as DON. There is another drug which we call as DAS. In addition to aflatoxins, you know that I sometimes demonstrated the picture that a maize is affected by a fungus and it produces aflatoxins. Similarly, we have got certain algae like blue-green algae. Anabina is very important. The cattle goes to drink water from a local pond, and pond is having a high infestation of the blue-green algae. Along with the drinking water, the cattle is also taking the blue-green algae. And the blue-green algae poisoning has been reported in United States of America, in United Kingdom also. Then there is another group of toxins. These are the gases. Suppose you are having a cattle farm and you move through that cattle farm, you smell something, and that smell is methane. Sometimes that smell is ammonia. Sometimes that smell is of formaldehyde. So these ammonia, the methane, the carbon monoxide, and hydrogen sulfide, and the formaldehyde or formic acid. These are the formaldehyde poisoning occurs in poultry workers. It has been reported as an occupational hazard. Similarly, the cattle, they are affected by the gases. Carbon monoxide, you know that what will happen if carbon monoxide is inhaled. You know what will happen if the methane is inhaled. They affect, lead poisoning has made the cattle blind. Similarly, these gases, they are not only respiratory irritants, they lead to serious blood disorders in addition to the problems on lungs and liver. In addition to this, there has been quite a few reports on salt poisoning in pigs, swine. The swine is allowed to eat higher amounts of salt through their food. You get the swine food from the market. The farmers, they get the swine fruit from the market. You can get the processed food even for cow, even for milk, and that processed food may be contaminated by something, and that will be leading to a health problem. So the salt poisoning has been reported in swine, and it has led to convulsions. The population, swine population, exhibit convulsions. This occurs at a higher concentration of salt. Then we have got these problems. In addition to these problems of gases, we have got some toxic plants. They are known to. We have already discussed plant toxicology, animal toxicology. There are certain plants, they are known to be poisonous in cattle, and there are variety of poisonous plants, and the cattle goes to graze in a field, and by accident heliotropium, heliotropium contains higher amount of copper and leads to a petolenticular degeneration, as it occurs in after copper poisoning. It occurs after eating the heliotropium contaminated grass. So these poisonings, they occur. Exposure to hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, monoxide, and nitrogen sulfide, these are known to be affecting the swine also, the cattle farm also, and the swine farm also. They are equally poisonous to swine, and they are equally poisonous to cattle. Therefore, the good farmers, they clean their farms, they clean their cow sheds, they clean their places where the pigs are kept, and so that this gas poisoning may not occur. So what is the conclusion? That the cattle may suffer a poisoning from insecticide, pesticide, it may suffer a poisoning from toxic elements, it may suffer poisoning from gases, it may suffer poisoning from the mycotoxins, it may suffer poisoning from algae, it may suffer poisoning from toxic plants. So this is in brief you are to prepare. You can go to Ballantine or some another good book, and you will find a lot of literature available on these areas. I hope this will help you in planning your studies. Right? See you again sometime.